Hey, what's up, podcast? It's Jeff. Just want to jump in here. This is a special bonus episode of Teach Better Talk. This is actually going to be the audio recording from a Facebook Live that our team is doing every single day, Monday through Friday, at 8 a.m. Eastern Time in our Facebook private group. You can get in that group at teachbettergroup.com or go on to Facebook and just search Teach Better Team. You'll see our page and then you'll see the group. Get in there. So here we go, a special bonus episode of Teach Better Talk pulled from one of our Facebook Live videos in our private group at teachbettergroup.com. Hope you enjoy.
Every single morning, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we are coming live in this private group at 7 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Eastern, just to talk shop. And today is a perfect day to talk shop and get our morning started because I have an amazing, amazing guest with me. Karen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. I'm Karen McKinley. I am in the Cincinnati, Ohio area, and I wear many hats and have through the years, but I'm curriculum director, instructional coach, ed tech integration, ELA consultant, pretty much whatever they want. That's what they signed me up to do. So, but I was an ELA teacher in the classroom from grades 3 to 8 for a long time.
It's wonderful. Yeah, I know I've been connected to you for a while, but actually our connection is because of your connection to Chad and Jeff as they were just getting started, kind of forming what is now known as the Teach Better team. So when we had connected and we had talked about bringing you on for a daily drop-in, I was so excited to not only learn from your expertise, but I hope you have a little bit of gossip for me on Chad and Jeff. That's my hope.
Well, they'd never been to Frisch's before they'd met me. And
there we go.
That is an iconic restaurant in this area. The Big Boy is just really an icon in the Ohio area. But yeah, I actually met Chad at the Ohio Association for Gifted Coordinators. Probably 6 years ago, maybe. I think it actually was the fall of his first year out of the classroom when he was really starting this. And he was in one of the breakout sessions, was presenting, and at that moment, one of my roles was to bring in professional development into Warren County, which is in the southern part of the state. And so I walked my way up there after the thing, and I said, "Hey, do you ever come to places and do workshops?" And he kind of cocked his head like Chad likes to do, and he said, "Well, yeah, I can do that." And so he came down and did a presentation, and we've been just keeping in contact ever since. And I am just absolutely thrilled to see how what he and Jeff created has grown. It's just amazing, and the people that they're touching, it's just. And then he brought you in. And they've brought a couple other people in on the team, and it's just really, they're putting together a very high quality group that's really making a difference in teachers' lives.
Oh, so fun to hear that. I love our team. It's like such that we were just talking before we went live. It's just full of good people, good educators trying to do more good, right? And so I think it's so awesome to connect with people that have kind of seen the journey. You know, obviously we won't touch on this for much longer because we do want to get to people's questions as they're commenting good morning and all these other elements of our daily drop-in. But there is a very special moment of being able to reflect with somebody who kind of was around just as the Teach Better team was being formed, just as we were discovering our why, our purpose, why we felt like this team needed to be created to help other educators be the best they can be every single day and then grow to be a little bit better the following day. And it's just been awesome. I mean, you've known Jeff and Chad longer than I have. And I was so excited to be brought onto this team and, you know, continue to do the work that they set out to do very early on and have definitely scaled from then. So it's amazing to see not only, you know, the small goals that they had along the way, but celebrating, you know, Becky, Megan, Andrea, Bella, Ashley, Jen, Hans. I mean, I go through Emily, all these people that have now brought onto our team that make this possible. So we really appreciate you, Chad and Jeff. I hope you're not listening because I never say nice things about you. So
I won't tell them.
Yeah, don't tell them. I know
won't.
this is recorded, but hopefully Jeff and Chad are sleeping and they're not watching our daily drop-in this morning.
Got it. Okay.
So as people are saying good morning, I know we have Alex here, Holly, Bree, Andrea, and baby Luke is here. I do love when baby Luke joins our daily drop-in. Greg is commenting. Greg, it's so great to see you. He was a part of our daily drop-in just a few days ago, and Lindsay's here. So don't forget, if you're participating in the comments, we are here to take questions and do whatever we can do to help you. To be honest with all of you, I had a really rough night with my students yesterday that we can touch on. But we also have more information about when our school year is ending that I just saw in my inbox, like not 5 minutes ago. So I assume that if all these pieces are going on in my own life as a teacher during COVID-19, that a lot of you also are getting new information and needing a brainstorming partner. So Karen and I are here to do that for you and with you. And we want you to feel confident in the work you're doing. So, Karen, obviously with the multitude of roles that you have, how has your role changed since COVID-19 has kind of come to the forefront of the conversation?
In a lot of ways, I've been an observer. My roles that I've had, I have 3 contracts right now. And so they are all pretty much based on being in the school and working directly with either with teachers or students or something along those lines. And so what I have pretty much been doing is just monitoring the emails going back and forth, trying to plug in whenever I can to assist the teachers or enhance what they're doing. But I am actually just now within the last week or so actually pushing things out and starting to get more involved in not only helping them to kind of sort through all the options they have, but now we're starting to talk about what is best practice. And nobody really knows at this point what best practice is. I mean, there's a lot of theories out there. I think at this point we're looking at what is better practice, what we've seen from the communities that have worked. And I know you, Ray, and a lot of people tuning in today have a lot of different groups there on Facebook or Twitter or the emails that they get. And I've just been trying to glean the best out of those things and help them kind of figure out what to do, but also start looking towards next year. In Ohio, we're out through the rest of the year. That came last week. So, that decision has been made. Districts right now are really struggling with what to do with the seniors and honor them. It's weighing very heavily on everyone's heart and mind. But they also are trying to think about what fall is going to look like. And that is a huge question mark. So, I think what we have to do as educators is we have to set ourselves up so that no matter whether it's distance learning, it's back in the classroom, or some combination of it, we're ready to go.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on 2 different things, so let's split those up and go a little bit deeper. One is that you're doing so much to support educators kind of sifting through the information they're getting and focusing on what's most relevant, which I think is such an important topic to talk about, and I love that you're part of finding a solution for that. The other element, and this came up yesterday in our administrative mastermind that we had, we've been having one a week, is, we had educators come together that were all district leaders, whether they were principals or superintendents or directors of curriculum. And they were talking about this issue with trying to kind of end the year, create some sort of closure, and then also welcome back some sort of plan. And really it needs to be a tiered plan for August. And so, there's kind of 2 different roles, whether you're a classroom teacher serving your students right now, or some sort of district leader trying to kind of put the puzzle pieces together and be a strong advocate for your teachers. So have you found like your role maybe more challenging in one or still, is one more interesting in terms of the work that you've been doing thus far?
I think one of the, every cloud has a silver lining. And I think one of the most interesting things that I've been able to get involved in is getting the ear of the administrators more. Being that I work in a county agency, I'm contracted to go into different places and I have access to administrators, but, they are struggling with this as much as anyone else is. Their concern their first concern was lunch. That was their first concern. Their next concern was connectivity and making sure that they knew that all students were okay. And they're still working through that. Some of them, they're still having a hard time getting with that. And now, but both of those things have kind of started slowing down a little bit. Teachers are starting to kind of hit their stride in what they're doing. And so everybody's kind of taking a deep breath. And so now they're thinking about closing out the year and then what the fall is going to look like. And they don't have the answers. I mean, nobody's written this playbook before. And so one of the things, as frustrating as it is for teachers, once in a while we have to give the administrators a little grace. And, they're trying to figure it out. And, I'm seeing a lot of different things. I'm seeing where they're setting dates for the last new instruction to take place.
Yep.
That's the first thing they're doing. A lot of conversation going on about grading. Everybody is all over the board with it. They've all over the board. And, whether they're actually taking grades or pass fail or using it as optional activities, however they do it, in my heart of hearts, I really have a hard time thinking that there's been a lot of learning that's gone on during this time. Now some districts who have had a little bit more higher socioeconomics, that had more experience with technology and things like that. Yeah, I think some of those teachers have just really just kind of, hit the thing. But I have heard from that segment that the teachers were treating it as if they were in their regular classroom. And they were it was just like whatever your 45-minute or 90-minute bell was, that they just turned it into digital. And it's been completely overwhelming to the kids. So I think it's really, they're trying to figure out how to, when to end it, how to end it. But I think even now it's really dawning on them that how do we start the year? The first 2 or 3 weeks of school is always building that community, getting to know your kids, getting your routines involved. We don't know what vehicle we're going to use. And so I think that's where we need to start. We need to start thinking about, if we are in a remote situation again, how can we welcome people into a community and build community within the students? What classroom structure do we need? And, when we're in a regular physical building, brick and mortar, that really is just a decision that the individual teacher typically makes. But in this situation, it really, I really feel strongly that it has to be a collaboration between all teachers that the student will have. And I think it's going to be most successful if everyone's structure is similar, in the way what we call things like quizzes or assignments or, behavior expectations when you're online or offline, the vehicle we're using. Certainly we can use any technology tool we want that's appropriate for your content area. That's not taking away any creativity, but also just one of the things I learned in a webinar earlier this week is that you can actually share Google Calendars. And so, I was thinking about that in terms of my teachers in one of my districts with the department is that, they're in pods. They have a team A and a team B. So they have a studies, science, math, language arts teacher in one team, and then they have a mirror in the same grade level. And if that team could share a calendar, then the teachers could look and say, okay, well, math has got a test on this day, science is doing a lesson this day, and being able to help manage that workload a little better with using a shared calendar. So that's one of the things that I learned just this week that I thought, wow, that would be very powerful, for us.
Yeah, and you've touched on a few different ideas. One is this idea that teachers are starting to kind of like exit out of survival mode, and they're trying to now find the essentials of what remote learning is going to look like until the end of their year. And then you brought up an idea that also Alex commented in the comments of what are these practices that we need to have in place that are essential. So if we go back to remote learning, they exist. And you gave a great suggestion of how to have communication be clear, but there really also needs to be some essentials in a classroom of, like you said, common language and elements like that, so we can support our students. And the reality was, friends, like, we couldn't or didn't have that early on because we were all in survival mode. We were all taking, everything was hour by hour. It seemed like we had new information every moment. And so we were flying by the seat of our pants and building the plane while it was in the air, right? And I'm not saying that's wrong. Like, we got through, we really put our students first, and that's incredible. Now that we have the gift of time where we can think on these ideas, not only now, but also is the possibility of August, we really need to do ourselves a favor and kind of put students first again, where we say, how can we develop these systems? How can we develop these structures, these barriers, and this language use, so that we can support our students if this comes up again in August? And the reality is, like you noted, and we also talked about this at length in our administrative mastermind that we hosted, there really needs to be 3 plans of how to come back in August, whether it be fully digital or a blended model or back in that brick and mortar. Because the reality is that, like, we as educators need to be ready for whatever comes our way, right?
Right. And I know, first off, a shout out to all of our teachers, because I know in Ohio, they had 24 hours notice. It was announced at 2:00 on a Thursday, and it started the following Monday, basically. And some teachers had, pretty savvy tech skills at that moment, and others were just using a few tools. And again, another silver lining is that sometimes necessity is the mother of invention. And so they've had to dive in and learn tools. And so that opens up a whole new world of things. But what I think we can do as educators is set our lessons up, either for the first month or for the first 9 weeks, so that they can be used whether we are online or in the classroom, and we can just plug them in. And so, one of the things that I think that we also need to be aware of is that we always have a range of students. Everybody does. You have the very high, you have the very low, you have the in between, you have IEP students, you have gifted students, you have all of those things, which in and of itself is challenging. But last week I went to a webinar from NWEA, which is a company that has MAP, which is a diagnostic test, which it seems to be taking over the testing world. But anyway, it was fascinating. And Sal Khan was on the call, and who I'm a huge fangirl of. And they were talking about this whole thing. And what they have done is they have taken their data that they've collected over the past years about summer slide and what kids lose from May to August typically, and basically tried to create a model as to how far they think the kids are going to be behind when they come to us next fall. It was fascinating. So what they came up with was, for a gen ed kid, someone who was at grade level, hovering around grade level, maybe a little bit above grade level, they're estimating, again, we all know what models are, their best estimates, right? So, but their best estimate is that the student will end up having about 70% of what you normally see of mastery of when they come to you. When you look at the lower SES schools or students, the picture gets really glum. It is somewhere between 50% and less. And that was a punch to the gut, because, we're used to having students 1 or 2 years behind, but this could be a whole other thing. And, we just need to wrap our arms around that and know, okay, this is what's coming in, what does that mean? And so one of the things that I would recommend, and what I'm going to try and do with my teachers here soon, is one of the things, Common Core is either a happy term or a very ugly term, depending on where you are and what content you're in. But one of the things in language arts it did, which in Ohio was the first time it ever did, was it vertically aligned everything. The standards are the same from grade level to grade level, and it just changes that way. And in this particular situation, that is gold. Because what we need to do is we need to look at the standards we teach for our grade levels, and we need to look at what does that standard look like from last year? What does it look like from 2 years ago? and be prepared to have lessons to meet those things. What does it look like next year? And so you're going to have to, where we used to differentiate assessments, like we would have a high test, a medium test, and a low test before all of these things started happening. We're going to have to now look at the differentiation in our classroom in a whole different way and just recognize that those kids are coming. And we can use this time to be ready for them, or we can wait and then be overwhelmed when they get there.
And that's, I think, the biggest blessing right now that I really hope educators acknowledge is that, yes, we're in a really tough situation, but we're all there. So this isn't just one student who's now really struggling and behind, and we're going to have to find ways to support them, but all of our students are experiencing this gap. And so it really is an opportunity for us. I love the last line that you just said, that we can choose to be ready for it, or it can be overwhelmed when it happens, because we know it's coming. So if we could choose to be proactive, we're going to be in a very different space.
And I think, I think most people's standards, I think, are more vertical now. Certainly when you're in math or history or science, it can be more topical, like this year's when they learn this and this year's when they learn that. But the underpinning skills of how you do work are the same. And in those content areas, I think the key thing, and even in language arts, you need to understand what are those underlying skills. And that's where the grid comes in. Really, I mean, the grid method, which is what you guys, Chad, developed at the beginning where this all started, forces you to break those standards down into the really basic pieces. I mean, when I went to his training the first time, I decided to do it for an argumentative essay, because that is the hardest thing for my middle school kids to do. It's abstract, it's just difficult for them to do. And so I sat there for a good 20 minutes. I didn't even know how to start it. And so what I did was I just took a piece of paper and I just wrote, okay, this is what a good one looks like. And this is what you have to do. And I just kept going backwards and back planning it. And it came all the way down to one page later of reading a nonfiction article and being able to figure out what the main idea was. And, I took it all the way back. And you can do that with any content area, like in social studies, you want them to learn about, the Civil War. All right. Well, they need to know how to read a textbook. They need to know how to figure out what words are. They need to know how to pick out what the relevant pieces of information are, what isn't. They need to have experience with cause and effect. They need to understand inferencing, and those are all those underpinning kind of skills that, we need to start pulling those out, because if we can shore that up at the very beginning of school, the rest of the year, no matter whether we're in online, not online, somewhat in between, it's going to go so much easier. And it'll help hopefully to close that gap a little bit as well.
Well, to be able to find a framework, whether it be the grid method that we do a ton of professional development on for educators or something else, find something that allows you to use those best practices. You referenced the backwards design, which is essential when working towards meeting targets. We discussed scaffolding. We really support using WebSDOK to scaffold information. I mean, all those pieces, you need really strong formative assessments to track mastery throughout this time. But if you can find a framework that kind of puts all those things together, it makes your life a little bit easier, because then you have these strategies that work for your students versus trying to pull them in and kind of doing things in isolation and not finding that flow, which is really what our students need as they transition back to a physical classroom or a blended classroom or a remote classroom, is understanding the flow of their learning opportunities. So obviously you and I have used the grid method, and we really value the framework, the structure that provides. But whatever you choose to use, just ensure that it has those best practices, because that's going to be your saving grace of, ensuring students are goal setting, reflecting, and all the other elements that we really want to see in a strong classroom.
Well, and when I contacted you originally, about doing this, it was after watching a gentleman named Joe on a drop-in, and the conversation was all about the importance of learning how to videotape, create videos of yourself. And
really quick, Karen, what you're going to get to is so important. It's like the main point I want to make sure we discussed in our time together, because we're getting so many comments wondering about the essentials of remote learning. Can I give a little plug to a webinar series we just launched yesterday to make people are aware? And then I really, Karen, want to get to your topic because it's so important. Super fast for anybody listening, if you have not seen, we launched yesterday a teacher webinar series that will go on starting next week for the next 6 weeks, called Better at a Distance. And this is not only an opportunity to ensure that you are getting the support you need for the right now, but our hope is that it can also be food for thought as you consider August. So if you want information, I'm reading it off of my phone. You can go to teachbetter.com/webinar series. And like I said, it's going on for 6 weeks. And what we're going to do is we have a training on a topic. So for example, the first one is remote learning essentials, which is why I wanted to make sure it was brought up now. And we're going to do that training on a Monday. And then that will be saved in our academy for lifetime access. So you can always have access to it. And then we're going to host a debrief Q&A on Friday. So throughout this 6-part series, you're actually going to get 12 sessions to not only learn about a topic, but to be able to collaborate and discuss the topic. So we really would encourage any of you here who are participating in the comments saying, ooh, I really want to learn about the grid method, which is a session that we'll be hosting. Remote learning essentials is another session we'll be hosting. End of the year celebrations for the classroom, educator mental health. These are all elements that we want to make sure we support. And then the last one is about that transition of taking all this information and transitioning it into August, no matter what August looks like. So we are bringing together not only members of the Teach Better team that I know you all know a lot of our faces, but also we're bringing in our speakers network, which are educators that do professional development also around the country to kind of bring in their expertise. So again, if you're interested in looking into that free teacher webinar series, and I did want to mention it is free for our network. We value, we appreciate you. We want to be here to help. You just need to go to teachbetter.com/webinar series. And that can get you the access you need to register for all 12 sessions and have lifetime access to that information in the academy, which is super helpful. So I just want to make sure I got that in. Karen, you were beginning to talk about our daily drop-in that we did with Joe, and Joe was so fun to chat with. And when you reached out, you had an additional layer that you wanted to add to that conversation. Would you mind kind of telling us more about that?
Sure. But I was looking at the comments while you were doing your thing, and there was one person else that had also been on an NWEA webinar, and they were talking about that the predictions were based on doing what we've always done. That's true. That's true. But at the same time, what they were trying to do is figure out how what this has done has changed that. Another comment was that the pandemic is actually identifying some gaps we just didn't know existed. And that is also true. So what I'm going to recommend to my teachers and as trying to harness this energy and kind of get prepared is within this concept of videotaping yourself. What I have seen from pretty much everybody that I've talked to is that the most effective videotapes are somewhere between 3 to 5 minutes long.
Yes.
What a lot of us teachers have done have been to, basically video an entire lesson that we would have done it like a lecture. And that is no criticism. I mean, no, there's no stones being thrown here, but what I'm talking about is for the going forward. So if we take the standards and we break them down into pieces and we create a video for each piece, like 3 to 5 minutes long, right? So if it's in this argumentative essay example that I gave you, that it was the nonfiction reading, we have some kind of little mini lesson that's in there that's 3 to 5 minutes that talks about how do you pick out the main idea in something? How do you find out what's relevant information? Maybe there's another one on cause and effect. Maybe there's another one on inferencing. Maybe there's another one on decoding. And some of those basic videos can be uploaded into your LMS, your Google Classroom, and can be accessed all year long. And so kids can watch them over and over and over again, because I think what we have to realize as educators is that we've always been in the customer service business. we're in the human business, but our customers are no longer just our students. Our customers are also their parents. And so it can be anywhere from 15, 20, 30 years since they've had any of this. And so these little videos that we're creating are not only going to help our students get those basic skills, but they're also going to create a common focus and a common language and a common process between us and the parent in how they're helping them at home. And if they're there all year long, if you put them in your stream or you put them in something in materials where it's, it just is always there. Whenever you come up with something else, especially if you have a student you identify that struggles with reading and they need something, okay, your first step is on your playlist or your thing, go back and watch this video. Go back and watch this video. And you just change what it is they're reading.
Well, and for the teachers that we've been coaching that have been using the grid method, it's very common practice, especially if you have one-to-one technology in your classroom, that you have some sort of 3 to 5 minute video that introduces an idea, and then you have some sort of practice that practices the idea, and then you have some sort of formative assessment. And that structure, more or less, is found all the way throughout the grid. So very often we have teachers that have these bare bones, just an idea and learning a concept in the grid that's already in a video. And when you already have that done, then you can start working with the student on that deeper level of understanding. They already have the surface level from that quick little clip, but now you can do the more rich activities to add that depth of knowledge to their learning. And so if you've already had that done, remote learning may not have been a massive transition in terms of putting in that support, but if you want to build that structure, it's absolutely conducive for you to then use it in the future when we go back to, what we knew as our normal with our students all together in the classroom.
Well, and, the framework you're talking about with the grid method, starts with Webb's DOK, and you start with the DOK1. But the reality is that we are going to be DOK -1, -2. I mean, we may have, and what we need to do is when we break the standards down, into the pieces, we need to then look at what does that standard look like in a grade level below me and create a little video for that. What does it look like when it's 2 levels below me and create a little video for that? And you may not, hopefully you won't need to do it, but if you do, it's already there. And
like you were referring to in the grid method, if you build those supports in and a student already mastered it, then they can move on. But for your students who need that support, they have the permission to take the time to master that skill before moving forward.
Exactly. And, when you create your videos, you want to title them so that, maybe it's standard 8.1, it's 8th grade, in nonfiction 0.1. Okay. Title it 7th grade nonfiction 0.1, 6th grade. And the kids don't need to know what those titles mean, or you can come up with some other, that's one of the things that we work with a lot is trying to keep the bluebirds and the blackbird thing away and have kids just be able to where they're at and be okay with that. That's where they're at and it's not where they're staying and go forward from that. But, so I think that's really, a way that we can be prepared for that. And whether you're one-to-one or you've got a cart that you share, or maybe you have 3 or 4 computers in your classroom, you can use this. So let's take this situation where you either have a cart or you only have 3 or 4 computers. Then you can go into what is more of a traditional, I'm going to use the word, but it's still fairly new, blended learning. And Caitlin Tucker, Caitlin Tucker, is one of the people who has been at the forefront of, spreading the word and the message about how effective. And basically what she does in her high school language arts class, she has centers like you would in a kindergarten. And her high school students go from one to the next. So if you have limited technology, you can have that center, if you want to, be where these videos reside or where they can be accessed. And then as they go through the other things, maybe they're offline, maybe they're pencil and paper, much like with the grid where we have the traditional milk filing box and, it's opportunity 1A and every paper you need is in there, or you can take everything for 1A and put it digitally. You can do all those kinds of things. But if you have those videos, and another way of doing the blended learning is what they call playlists or HyperDocs. They use those kinds of things. And basically, those are just documents that live on some digital platform that have links to them. And you can, it's like the grid. The playlist is kind of like the grid. It's basically you start here and you kind of go up here, and you get from, maybe Mary Had a Little Lamb all the way up to a sonata. And, you kind of go along the path that way. So the beauty of creating these small videos is that no matter what child you get, no matter where they are, you can plug them in. So, and you have that done up front. And so it's more work right now, but once you've created them, you don't ever have to do it again. Unless you just unless you feel like you're having a bad hair day, or you stuttered, or you have a better way of explaining it. I mean, they're there, and you don't have to recreate them.
Well, and I want everyone listening, you have touched on so many really valuable ideas. I hope that if you're listening right now and you're saying, "Oh, I really love this idea, tell me more," there are so many blogs on these topics over at teachbetter.com or reach out to Karen herself, because the variety of things, whether it be how to design a framework, how to utilize videos, how to title videos. I mean, you had so many good little tips and tricks in there. I hope you all choose to reach out to Karen to continue to learn about those ideas, because they really can be lifesavers. I do want to say we've been talking a little bit about the structure of the classroom, and then that grading is always a topic that people like to talk through, and especially those like to talk about standard-based grading, which is seen as this progressive concept. So what I do want to preface, especially with those commenting in the comments, mastery learning is essential. Personalizing students' learning is essential to even get to the point where you can grade students that are more focused on feedback and that standard-based grading mindset. I do want to give a shout out to Dave Schmittou, who is probably listening at some point in this video. He is doing today at 4:00 Eastern, he's doing a standard-based grading basics webinar, I would assume. And if you go connect with him, I'm sure he can give you the link to get access to that. If you're somebody who's been hearing about this idea of valuing feedback above all in the classroom and wanting to make sure that feedback is targeted, standard-based grading might be something, especially in the philosophical sense, it might be something you want to explore. I'm confident, having worked with Dave a few times, that his webinar on going over the basics is going to be really valuable. If you don't catch that, there's also obviously courses on mastery learning and standard-based grading and all those other pieces in the Teach Better Academy. But just a little shout out to Dave, who's continuing to push out so many resources for teachers. I really love the work he's doing. So that's awesome. So it looks like there's been a lot of comments so far. Joe's even commenting right now that he can't wait for the webinar later today. Andrea says, so many of my reteaching lessons begin with rewatching a video of a lesson. So Karen, that really connects with your suggestion to teachers that this is not wasted time making videos and that they can utilize them when they head back into the classroom. If you had one takeaway that you wanted teachers to really hold on to, and not only after connecting with you now, but also for future conversations, what do you want them to keep in mind for remote learning and everything going on as we continue to move forward supporting students?
That is a great question. I don't know if there's any one thing. Certainly, we have to all be flexible. We have to all give ourselves grace because we're creating something that's never been done before. But I also think that we have to, if we're going to work hard, which is what we're doing, we need to work smart and create things now that we can use no matter what happens in the future. Because one of the things that's as a veteran teacher you get after a few years is that you have certain things that work, certain lessons that work, certain approaches work, certain amount of pacing that knows work, and that kind of gotten all thrown out the window right now because we don't know if what we did face to face is still going to be effective or not. So I think I would really say to them two things. One is make sure that you break your standards down, be aware of the fact that you are going to get kids that are going to need you to explicitly teach them the standards from grade levels below in more ways than you have ever seen before. And that you're also using the pretest. Use the concept of a pretest for everything, because, and one of the things that I know with the grid, and I no matter what you use, what I would do with your pretest is try to narrow it down to a single or two skills at a time, and have questions on there that hit grade level, have questions on there that are grade level above, have questions that are on there that are grade level below, and questions that are 2 grade levels below, all on the same standards. So that when you bring this in, you can see, okay, well, I'm a 7th grade teacher and they didn't get the 7th grade answer, but they didn't get the 6th grade answer, but they got the 5th grade answer. Now I know where to start with that student, and I have a video about 5th grade at this standard. And so now I can assign, because now in Google Classroom or in any other LMS, pretty much you can assign specific things to specific kids. So now their playlist or their grid or whatever it is, their agenda that you're using, going to start there, and then that you also know that from looking at the class as a whole, that's the only one that's there. So now we pull in our intervention specialist, whether this child has letters behind their name or not. We pull our intervention specialist, can we work with them and some of your students on this, and you start creating those small groups. You can just still do small grouping, in remote distance learning. And because you've got these videos, you don't have to necessarily be live as much. And so when you are live, you can send out specific invitations to the small groups. And so and everybody would have a group, and it could change depending on what it is you're teaching, but the other thing too, and this, I was talking with the superintendent yesterday, and he feels, he's a superintendent for one of the counties, and his estimation is he pretty much feels we're going to be on still remote learning in the fall, at least in Ohio. For how long, we don't know, but he kind of thinks from everything he's hearing, that's where it's going to be. But one of the things he talked about was that, us as educators, as professionals, as people who have gone to college, we need to really be aware of equity, and that students from lower socioeconomic and some minority groups, may be living in a very chaotic situation. There may be one device for 5 kids. There may be 8 to 10 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment. There may be parents that are, working 2 or 3 jobs. There may be, and this is one of the things that's weighed on my heart, stressed families being more stressed, and the possibility of increased abuse of our children. And, and that's weighed heavily on me, because if you get people locked in, even good siblings, can rub each other differently when they're spend too much time together. So, but he said, we really need to be aware of that. And so I think taking these little videos and making the learning asynchronous so that they don't have to be tuned in at a certain time of the day to see you on as a normal course of your structure, that gives the family a lot more flexibility to be able to plug the student in when it's convenient for the family, and you get better chance of buy-in. I don't think that means that we don't have those live sessions. I think it's very important. The kids need to see you. They miss you so much. They do. And we miss them. We do. So I think it's important to have the live sessions, but we could take those live sessions, and instead of it being a whole group thing, we can make them into those small groups. And the way you get those small groups is through pre-testing. And, I know that one district I works with does use MAP. Another one uses Iowa's and things along those lines. And this give you a lot of information, and depending on how adept you are at reading data and inferring from data, it's certainly extremely helpful, but it's not the same as a pretest you've created on a standard. It's not the same. It's never going to give you that level of information. And so while we're still working and trying to figure out, let's create those videos, let's create those pretests at the different levels, and just have them in your little toolbox. And then no matter where you go, you're going to be ready.
So spot on, Karen. I love everything that you have shared throughout this daily drop-in. There were so many moments of really great tactical tips that I feel like I could go implement with my students later today. And there were so many different ideas of things that I could be working on over the next few months to break down my standards and really make sure that I'm ready for August. And I really value you bringing these ideas to our daily drop-in because they really are so important for all teachers to be considering. So thank you so much. Would you mind sharing? I'm so confident there's going to be people that want to reach out to you after this video. How can people stay connected after our daily drop-in concludes with you?
Probably the easiest would be to use my own personal Gmail account, because I have, like I'm sure you do, Ray, I have several accounts depending on what district I'm in. So it's Karen, Karen .McKinley, McKinley, capital M, period, capital ED for Masters of Education at gmail.com. So it's karen.mckinley.m.ed@gmail. One other thing real quick, if I could just add one last little piece to this technology thing. There are things out there that are self-adapting softwares. And to me, this is one of the hidden golden secrets. When I say self-adapting, what I mean is I'm going to use a couple of vendors by name. I'm not endorsing them. I don't get any money from any of them. They just have this particular thing that's in there. But Newsela, vocabulary.com, No Red Ink, Khan Academy, all of those vendors have self-adapting built into it. And so what happens is that either there's a diagnostic test, or as students take quizzes on Newsela, after 8 quizzes, it kicks in on vocabulary.com. After they've taken 10 rounds, it kicks in. No Red Ink, I'm not sure exactly at what point it kicks in, but at some point there's this mathematical thing that's well above my pay grade algorithm that says, based on their answers, here's where they are. And it starts shooting them, when they open it up the next time, it starts shooting them stuff at their right level. And I would recommend that we use those tools for those routine type items. I mean, I'm a language arts teacher. Grammar is not exciting to me. I mean, I have to do it, yes, but that is really boring. Vocabulary is not always a really exciting thing, although Catlin Tucker has this really cool thing she got from Jimmy Fallon that makes it really cool. You'll have to check that out. But the kids love vocabulary.com because it's kind of a little bit of a game kind of format, and it's mastery based. They have to learn every definition of a word. And the same thing with Khan Academy. It puts them where they need to go, and it takes them up there. And so use those tools for some of those routine things, that just have to be developed. And so that you are creating things that are specific to your grade level and your standard and the things that those things can't hit, so it takes less work.
I love this idea of purposefully embedding a tool because it solves a purpose for our students. And rather than just, kind of throwing a dart at the wall and seeing what free tool you want to use today, really ensuring that you're incorporating these purposefully. You just gave a number of different examples of how to do that. I really appreciate that, Karen. That's a wonderful tidbit to make sure we got shared in our daily drop-in.
One last thing, and I'll let you go. I'm sorry. So a lot of people are using YouTube videos, and there is wonderful options for that. TED Ed Talks are great. They're designed for kids. But when YouTube videos, you have all that gunk on the side, and then you have that auto feature play. And I'm sure I'm not the only teacher who has put a YouTube video up on the screen and then had something pop up on the right-hand side that was like, that's really not appropriate. And so there is a place called safeyoutube.net, safeyoutube.net. And you take your YouTube videos URL, you plug it into that, and it creates a brand new URL, and it gets rid of all that garbage. And so when you upload that URL into your Google Classroom or your Element, and when the kids open it up, all they see is just the video. And they don't see, there's no automatic forward thing. It's just, and I got that at ISTE a few years ago, and it was a life changer for me. It just gives you the confidence to be able to use what's already been out there. You just have to be a critical looker at it. I mean, you have to look and see whether it is high quality or not, because, there's some stuff out there that isn't. But anyway, So that's my last tip for the day.
No, it's so good. And the reality is that in and of itself is an example of a tool that teachers have been wanting to find. And Tammy's actually asking for that URL again. So we're going to get that for you in a second, Tammy. But all these resources, that the idea that you're like, why doesn't this exist? It probably does. We just need to make sure you have access to it. So, small little ideas like that, if you're not sure where to find something, but you feel like it must exist because it's going to serve your students better, use this PLN, Google it, find those resources because they do exist and they are extremely beneficial for our students. So would you mind sharing that again for Tammy?
Yeah, it's SAFE, SAFE, YouTube.net. And I think it's a nonprofit organization. I've never seen any ads or anything for like a premium version or anything like that. So, and I've been using it for years. So it's really easy and it's just gives you a lot of peace of mind. That have some naked people show up on the side of your or an advertisement for something that I don't even understand what that is. So
I love it. Well, Karen, thank you again so much for choosing to join our daily drop-in. You had so many different elements I know people are going to go look further into and reach out to you to ask further questions. We just really appreciate that you took the time to share your insight and your resources with us. So I really, really appreciate you so much. And for everybody else, I hope you join us tomorrow morning and every morning, Monday through Friday, for our daily drop-in. Don't forget that these are available on YouTube. If you missed a little bit or popped in late, you can always catch those. And there are also bonus episodes on Teach Better Talk podcast every single day. So you can see that. Don't forget also, we have so many amazing guest bloggers that are sharing their insights over at teachbetter.com/blog. So if any of these ideas were interesting, we might have a blog on it over there. So you can go check those out as well. But Karen, thank you again for donating your time. We really, really, really appreciate you. And we can't wait to see what people do with your tips and tricks.
Well, it's been an honor. And this group is, if you're part of this group, you are a dynamic innovator. And I just give you all the applause in the world. And, you just give yourself a little grace as we're working through this. And we'll all get through it together.
We will so much. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate you. See you later.